As it usually is in Oklahoma, May was an active weather month. Flooding, large hail, high winds, and destructive tornadoes made life interesting for many Oklahomans and devastating for others. More storms this week reminded us the spring severe weather season isn't over, and that has many people looking for ways to protect themselves from the next deadly storm.
It's continuing to track straight east, and as you can see, this thing hasn't decreased in size any.
Mindy Chaddick knows all about close brushes with killer tornadoes. Chaddick wrote out the May 3rd, 1999 tornado in a bathtub and hoped she'd never have to live through a similar experience. On May 20th, she and her children took refuge in her mother's below-ground shelter as the storm passed over the Plaza Towers neighborhood and more. Chaddick says this one was worse than May 3rd.
I thought that the door was going to come off. I mean, it was banging so loud. The vent that was on the shelter actually was blown off and debris was flying down inside the shelter. And we just were covering our heads and screaming in prayer. There was nothing we could do.
Her mother's house was destroyed, but the shelter kept Chaddick and her family safe. Survivors tell similar stories throughout more. Tom Reynolds is an engineer with URS Corporation, which partners with the National Wind Institute at Texas Tech University to assess shelter performance. Reynolds and a team from Texas Tech came to Moore this week to see how the shelters held up. They didn't find a single failure.
A failure for us is lives are lost. During a major tornado, the shelter or a safe room, they could be damaged, but if no lives are lost, that's a success.
Reynolds says there were some minor issues at a handful of shelters.
We did see some ventilation on top of below ground shelters that had been damaged, but usually that just caused some small debris like dust and insulation to come in through the vent holes. And then we had a couple where the door latches came a little bit loose, and the homeowner had mentioned that they had to relock it down or hold it down.
All shelters certified by the National Storm Shelter Association have to meet certain minimum standards. That includes the ability to survive wind speeds up to 250 miles per hour.
In addition to the 250-mile-an-hour wind, we have what's called a debris impact or missile impact requirement, which means that it has to withstand a 15-pound 2x4 traveling at 100 miles an hour horizontally at it.
The testing performed at the National Wind Institute shows what can happen to a structure without a safe room. Despite their value in saving lives, Oklahoma does not require safe rooms in homes or schools. Reynolds says there is a provision in the 2015 International Building Code that would require safe rooms in high-risk areas.
If a state or a local community adopts the 2015 International Building Code, a shelter will be required in all new schools, K through 12 schools, and emergency operations centers and police stations, fire stations, those type of facilities.
But the provision will only be binding on states that adopt the 2015 Building Code. Tom Bennett is past president of the National Storm Shelter Association. Bennett says no state mandates safe rooms, and very few communities anywhere require a shelter.
I know the only one that actually was successful in getting a mandate in place was in Hurricane Market down in Jacksonville, Florida. They have a development there that required 6x8 safe rooms to be installed for hurricane preparedness. It affected the sales of the homes, honestly.
Bennett estimates fewer than 1 out of every 8 Oklahomans has their own shelter. He says home builders are reluctant to include safe rooms in new homes because of the cost.
Talking about new construction, if it's a below ground product, you're talking $3,000 to $4,000 entry level. Above ground, you're talking $4,000 to $5,000 entry level. And the cost can go all the way up as to what you want, based on your preferences, and the number of people you want to protect.
Immediately after the May 20th tornado, Moore Mayor Glenn Lewis floated the idea of a city ordinance requiring safe rooms in all new homes. But at a news conference the following day, Lewis appeared to be backing off that proposal.
And we have to talk about this with the Home Builders Association to see how much difference in the cost. We don't want to be so expensive that our homes are not affordable.
Governor Mary Fallin quickly rejected the idea of a state mandate for safe rooms.
We aren't going to require people to do anything, but if someone chooses to do that, we certainly encourage it.
Since the May 20th tornado, interest in storm shelters has skyrocketed. Robin Hood with Smart Shelters says the waiting list for a shelter at his company now stretches into September.
We've got about 10 people answering phones here, writing contracts. Last week we sold about 650 shelters.
Just last week?
Just last week.
In a typical week, what would you normally do?
You're probably looking at around 75 to 100.
The state provides some incentives to residents who want to install a storm shelter in their homes. Oklahoma Emergency Management Director Albert Ashwood says the first program started after the May 3rd tornado.
During that program after '99, we spent $12 million on safe room rebates, so 6,000 safe rooms at a minimum. In 2003, when the storm came through here again, we did it once again, spent another $3 million on safe rooms.
2 years ago, Oklahoma began the Sooner Safe program, offering rebates of up to $2,000 with the money awarded through a lottery system. Ashwood says the rebates are paid for with federal funds, which come from a hazard mitigation grant program.
And that's eligible after you have a presidentially declared disaster. For every dollar of federal funds that go into a disaster recovery operation, 15 cents is set aside for mitigation purposes. And that's how we can run those programs and accept those applications from the locals.
Ashwood says there are no plans to expand the program.
We want to make sure that individuals have the opportunity to get a safe room in their home, but we don't want it to be totally a government-funded program. I'd hate to see somebody standing out there saying that I would have had a safe room if the government had paid for it quicker.
The city of Moore also hoped to offer rebates for safe rooms before May 20th, but that program is on hold while the city awaits a federal grant. Galen Kitch is the emergency management director in Moore.
We've been unable to apply for that as yet because of needing a document in place that we've been working on. It's taking a very long time to get the document exactly the way FEMA would like it and get it approved.
The city of Moore's website blames the delays on changes in federal requirements, noting, "We found that the FEMA requirements and their interpretations seem to be a constantly moving target, more so with the new wrinkles." Several state lawmakers are teaming up with businesses to launch a nonprofit organization to raise funds for shelters in Oklahoma schools. Houston-based energy company Apache Corporation has pledged $500,000 to start the Shelter Oklahoma Schools program and will offer another $500,000 to match additional donations. Representative John Eccles concedes retrofitting every school in Oklahoma won't be easy. Emergency officials estimate the cost of building safe rooms will approach $1 million per school, and Oklahoma has more than 1,600 public schools. The total could easily be more than $1 billion.
This will take a team effort on that. Will it take some companies maybe seeing what companies like Apache have done and deciding, I want to help donate labor, I want to help donate materials, I want to help work with these people? Absolutely, yes, that is absolutely what it will take.
Still, Mindy Chaddock knows from hard-earned experience the value of a shelter in Tornado Alley. Her mother is still deciding whether to remain in Moore, but one thing is certain. Does she plan on rebuilding?
At this time, we don't know.
Wherever she does move, will there be a shelter?
There will be a shelter, 100%, yeah.
Steve Bennett produced this story. Steve, how many people have applied for the Sooner Safe rebate?
Well, since the program began 2 years ago, there have been 20,000 people that have gone online to register. By the way, you can go to www.ok.gov/OEM and then click on the Sooner Safe tab, and that will take you to the site where you can register for this program. There have been about 500 winners, so 500 winners, 20,000 applicants. You can see that the demand for rebates far outstrips the supply of available money.
Is the rebate enough to cover the cost of a shelter?
Unfortunately, no. It's $2,000, and most of the prices for a below-ground shelter will run in the $3,000 to $4,000 range. If you're talking about an above-ground safe room, that's more expensive, anywhere from $6,000 to $8,000, and of course you can go above $10,000, depending upon your preferences, how many people you want to protect. So it is going to be very costly. There have been reports, in fact, of people that have actually won the Sooner Safe lottery, but they've had to back out because they couldn't afford the additional cost. So still some very expensive shelters out there, and still need a lot more money to be able to pay for all of them.
Steve Bennett, thanks for that report.
Thank you.